roller coasters are fun, but they can also be downright dangerous. These following 5 dangerous roller coasters you can't ride anymore have all been shut down. We plan on showing you just how dangerous they really were and make you glad you weren't around to give them a shot. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. Hypersonic XLC King's Dominion. With a name like Hypersonic XLC, this ride seems like it was always bound to push the limits and test the engineering skills of those in charge of its handling. As history has shown, it very much lived up to its hype while also exceeding what was deemed safe for riders in no small way. This beast of a ride was a feature at King's Dominion and had quite the run. Safety concerns abounded during its tenure, however, and it was eventually shut down in 2007 due to extensive downtime and exorbitant running costs. This came after a 6-year run at the park, thankfully with no serious injuries to report. It seems that people really had nothing to worry about, despite the ride's revolutionary and somewhat untested design. It seems like the group behind the ride's construction, S&S Worldwide, really knew what they were doing. They have, in fact, continued to construct world-renowned roller coasters since, and have been at the forefront of roller coaster tech for decades. It goes without saying that all that worrying didn't stop the Hypersonic from having quite a storied career. It's resided at a number of different locations and was up for sale for quite a long stretch after being discontinued at King's Dominion. It was eventually dismantled entirely and recycled. The ride is notable because it was the world's first compressed air launch roller coaster, making it quite a feat of engineering in its time. The first ride opened to park guests in 2001 and was an immediate hit despite initial delays in getting it up and running. After the park first unveiled the ride, it remained unusable for the following 3 months while crews worked out the kinks. It didn't help that the Hypersonic had to be heavily modified from its original construction in order to properly fit the King's Dominion landscape and ensure that it was safe and sound for park guests to ride. These delays were planned to a certain extent, but ended up taking much longer than initially expected. Also worth mentioning here is that the Hypersonic XLC began its life as an actual prototype that was then deemed worthy of actual use, which isn't something that can be said about most roller coasters. This trivia tidbit isn't wildly important, but is definitely fun to consider. The Hypersonic began by blasting off up a 90-degree vertical ramp, going from 0 to 80 miles per hour in 1.8 seconds. After reaching the apex, it then dropped down another 90-degree turn before banking sharply left and right just before it stopped. The hill it first launched up was an impressive 165 feet high. This acceleration isn't too far behind the world's fastest accelerating roller coaster named Dodonpa, which uses the same launch system. Number 4. The Big Dipper, Krug Park and Battersea Park Fun Fair. The Big Dipper really isn't a name you want to see at an amusement park near you. It seems like the name is cursed, with a number of dippers around the world ending up being death traps on a disturbingly frequent basis. The roller coasters bearing the Big Dipper name in Krug Park and Battersea Park Fun Fair both have a supremely menacing death toll attached, with even more riders being seriously injured. The first incident at Krug Park, now renamed Gallagher Park, took place in 1930 and is considered by many to be the deadliest roller coaster accident in all of US history. The second, which is right up there in the history books with the first, occurred in 1972 and was just as devastating. The first dipper took the lives of 4 children, with the second claiming 5. The number of seriously injured people in both incidents was well over a dozen, and both were due to a mechanical malfunction that led to the packed cars derailing and flying off the track. What makes this even worse is that many of the occupants were pinned beneath falling cars as more followed suit, driven by momentum. The grisly scene was one that nobody would ever want to witness, with many of the onlookers and victims of the 72 accident suffering from intense PTSD and other stress-related psychological issues. We're not surprised here, as seeing your fellow riders crushed like toys beneath tons of twisted metal is no day at the park, pardon the pun. After the 1930 disaster, Krug Park never recovered from the bad publicity and was forced to close. We are convinced that that should have been the end of the Big Dipper forever, but Battersea Park Fun Fair apparently didn't believe that they would have to face such a terrible incident. Unfortunately, for those 5 kids who ended up losing their lives, they really didn't think their move through. Then again, not many people did back in those days, it seems, especially with regard to new feats of engineering. Testing, it seems, took a back seat to wild innovation. It also really doesn't help the Big Dipper's case to know that these early iterations of roller coasters were all notoriously unsafe, no matter how many precautions were taken. Furthermore, it can't help that both the Big Dippers were made almost entirely out of wood. While wood is durable and able to deal with the stresses involved, it's nowhere near where modern roller coasters are, and things were always prone to going terribly awry eventually. Safety measures were also fairly lacking back then, and we're happy to report that most rides today don't pose anywhere near this level of danger. Number 3. Ghost Train. Luna Park, Sydney. The Ghost Train is an apt name for this extremely dangerous roller coaster that used to be located in Luna Park, Sydney in Australia. The Big Dipper incidents claimed 4 and 5 lives respectively, but this one ended up taking the lives of a total of 6 children and 1 adult, as well as causing a fortune's worth of damage, completely destroying the ride and damaging nearby attractions. Built in 1931, a fire tore through the attraction in 1979. With 35 people still on the ride and inside the tunnel, emergency responders within the park and ride staff began trying to pull people free. Those who remained in their cars all managed to make it out safely, but the 7 occupants that were forced to abandon theirs weren't so